Alright guys, welcome to episode 6 of Bassin Biology. I'm your host, Thad Moody. As you can tell today, the robe is back. That's because I'm going to be dropping some knowledge on y'all. A little housekeeping. If you see behind me, you'll notice everything is a mess. It's because this whole area is being converted into a full-time podcast studio. Of course, I got new lighting up. A full-time baiting fishing wall, of course, on that side right there. And then also part of my research station. So, bear with me and come along with me on the journey of this transformation. But today, it's time to learn. As you can see, I've got the iPad and I've got my handy dandy notebook. So sit down, buckle up, and let's get ready and take this adventure together. Today is one of the most requested topics I've had, and that is, how do I grow better fish in my lake or pond? And we're going to go over that today. Just a heads up, this is mainly covering a 1 acre to 50 acre-esque, large pond, small lake. It'll work. These plans will work. These practices will work on your larger lakes. 100% will work. Harder to manage it with a bunch of public people, but these practices will work. But today we're going to concentrate on the 1 to 50 acre size big pond, small lake. Okay? My research, if you want to look it up, I pulled a lot of the information from my alma mater, Mississippi State University, from Dr. Wes Neal, some of his research, along with some of the extension publications out there. Wes Neal is the fisheries guy for Mississippi State Extension. He's very smart. His research is very solid, but I've also pulled some stuff from Dr. Jackson as well. So if you're interested in learning more, that's where I got my research from, a lot of my data from. These practices primarily pertain to the southern United States. Will they work up north? With some modification, yes. But remember, these are smaller lakes in the southeastern United States. That's what these practices are set up for. That's my expertise area. That's where I'm from. Take everything I'm saying today. If you're not from this area, contact me. I'll help you modify it for yours. But let's get started. We're going to go by Dr. Neal's tried and true threes. Build it right, stock it right, fish it right. And in my opinion, the fish it right part of it may be the most important, and he may say too, may be the most important part of this whole situation. We're going to get into that in detail. Again, y'all forgive me, it's hot. It is August, sorry. It's August in Mississippi. It is hot. So build it right. What does that mean? That means you don't need a 10 acre lake that's the deepest part's 5 foot, or the deepest part is 3 foot, or the shallowest part is 12 foot. That's not what you need. You have to build it right. So your build it right should be in your shallow area, you should have an average depth of 2 to 3 feet. The mean depth for the whole lake, which is the average of the entire lake, should be between 6 and 8 feet. And the deepest part should be around 10 to 12 feet. Now that's more for 10 acres and down. If you're doing a 50 acre lake, if some parts of it, the average depth is 8 to 10 feet and the deepest part is around 20, that's okay as well. It just depends on what your bottom is, how big the lake actually is. If it's, 30 to 50 acres, having some spots that are, 18 feet deep is okay. These are all averages overall. This isn't an exact science, but it's exact enough to work. So the different zones of these lakes, you're going to have the littoral zone, which is your shallowest areas. That's going to be up around your bank where a lot of your pond weeds, a lot of your shrubberies grow, and a lot of your cover is. You're going to have the limnic zone, which is most lakes close to down where the thermocline hits. 6 to 8 feet in some areas, and your smaller ones like that, it's probably 6 to 8 feet. Then you have your profundal zone, which is your deepest parts where a lot of light's not penetrating, because again, we're in the southeast, a lot of muddy water. So that's your deeper zones, your cooler zones. That's where light's not really penetrating deep into those areas to help with plant growth. So we have that going. So you get your littoral zone, your limit zone, and your profound drilled zone. You want your average shallow end to be 2 to 3 feet. Your mean average of the whole lake in between 6 and 10, and then your deepest part 15 to 20 feet, depending on how big it actually is, in my opinion. Some of them, the smaller ones, like a 10-acre lake, 10 to 12 foot deep is about as deep as you want it. Now, building it right does not just mean, just go in my notes here, does not just mean that you have enough shallow zone, deep zone, and medium zone. To achieve this correct build, a lot of times you're going to want a 3-to-1 ratio on your shallow ends. That means for every 3 foot out you go 1 foot deeper. So 3 foot out's a foot, 6 foot out's a little over, 9 foot out, 3 a little over, and so on and so forth in your shallower zones. Now, as you go towards your levee, and we're going to talk about levee construction in just a second. As you go towards your levee, you're going to want to be, probably a 2-to-1 ratio in some spots, especially on the levee itself. For every 2 foot you go out 1 foot deep. And because normally that area is going to be your deepest part of your lake, as is. And that's just kind of where your bowl and your reservoir is in that area. When you are going to look at buying, everybody wants a little lake or pond on their property. If you go to buy one or you're building one, make sure, if you're looking at property with one, that there are no trees on that levee. Because if the trees, or big bushes have roots that go out. So if you have roots that go out, that can lead to water seepage. If they, hit where the main lake is, that water will backtrack. It can cause blowouts. It can cause all kind of problems, especially if those trees die, those bushes die. Then those roots and stuff rot. That can definitely cause gaps and holes in that levee, which can in turn cause all kind of leakage and blowouts. And a lot of people invest a lot of money in these lakes and ponds and stuff. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want a blowout. If you're doing new construction, make sure if you put your pipe in, you have what they call a collar around your pipe. I prefer 2 collars. That way, even if you're using the rib pipes and stuff, the water can't backtrack. That collar stops it from backtracking and falling out to the end of the pipe and causing a blowout like that. So make sure you have your collars. Make sure you have a good clay core. We're not going to get into the actual digging and construction of it, but just make sure you have a good clay core in the levee. And also make sure you have a good overflow part of that levee. So if you get like a flash flood or something and a ton of water comes in, it doesn't go over the levee itself. It goes in the overflow levee. That way you don't, blow out your levee like that as well. So make sure your ratios are right. Make sure you have good shallow areas. Make sure you have an overflow. Make sure you have your collars on the pipe as the exit of it. If you want more research on that or more knowledge on that, contact the local builder. Your NRCS, USDA agencies, they all have engineers that'll come out for that, or your local extension people. Or call me, I can send you some information. Just message me. So that's kind of your build it right. You have it like that. But you also want to make sure, and this will tie back into the stock it right at the end and the fish it right. But when you're building this, you want to make sure that you have habitat for your fish. You see a lot of these ponds in people's front yards. It's clean cut all the way around. There's no grass in it. There's no trees or anything in it. There's nothing really structure-wise in that lake that you can see. There's a pretty fountain for aeration, which aeration can be important in some of these smaller lakes and ponds. But there's no real cover for them. If you want to produce trophy-esque bass or a trophy-esque fishery or even giant, brim fisheries like Sarah does on the Slab Lab, Sarah, I'm very sorry what happened to the Slab Lab, and we're going to touch on that later in the video. Some of the possibilities that would happen. But if y'all don't know Sarah Parvin, go look her up. She ran the Slab Lab growing giant bluegill in Alabama. They had a horrendous turnover in fish kill, and I don't know if they know the reasoning for it yet, but y'all go show her some love on that, support her, and boost her channel up so that way they can get that Slab Lab started back up. That's her and her father's life work, so go give them some support. But when you're growing, or when you're building this, you want to make sure that if you are putting brim in it, which we'll talk about that as well, you lay down some pea gravel. They love to bed in pea gravel. You make sure there's some pond weeds and some vegetation in there. That way they have places to hide. Make sure there's some fallen trees, some felled trees, some structure in the water. That way there's places for them to hide and get around. That will help in the long run in growing your fisheries and having a more complete ecosystem. So you want to make sure there's structure. Them pretty trimmed up ponds around, those are pretty ponds, they're not high productive ponds. You can have a pretty pond or you can have a high production pond. So when building it, make sure there's places for these fish to spawn, especially bluegill. Make sure there's places for that bluegill to spawn. Make sure there's places for those young fry to hide. That way they can grow to maturity or big enough for the other fish to eat. And make sure that they have structure to be in and around as they get older to help avoid some predators. So that's kind of your build it right. Structure, bedding areas, spawning areas, hiding areas, nursery areas for them to come up in. Build it right for your fish and they will treat you right in the long run. Next, stock it right. And this is where a lot of people have problems, is the stock it right part of it. So, we can delve into that. The stock it right can be the easiest part, but it can also be one of the more expensive parts if you do it correctly. For most of your 1 to 50 acre lakes, first rule of it is, don't put crappie in it. They'll ruin everything. No crappie anything under 50 acres. Don't do it. I've gone to so many lakes and small ponds, small lakes, medium-sized lakes. We put crappie in it because we like, and now everything's dead and gone. And crappie are voracious. They are like North America's piranhas. They will eat everything. You will not be able to grow big bass. Your brim will not make it past fryhood. They will wipe out everything. Crappie will kill a lake. It's fun for a little while, but in the long run, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're going to start all over. It's like blowing out a levee. You're going to rote and own that whole thing and get rid of them. And restock and spend a lot of money. But we're going to look at your classic southeastern lake. It's going to have bass, it's going to have brim, possibly catfish, and a few carp. So this is your stocking rate per acre. You want 50 bass per acre. You want 350 bluegill per acre. You want around 100 to 150 red ear sunfish per acre. And there's a reason for that, and we're going to talk about it at the end. You want 5 triploid grass carp per acre. Not Asian carp, grass carp. And get the triploid because they're technically an invasive species. And if they're a triploid grass carp, they cannot reproduce. You want 5 per acre. When they're small, they'll eat their body weight in vegetation. When you see them getting 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds, take them out. Their metabolism stops for some reason when they become giants. And they don't eat nearly as much. They're not nearly as effective as the small ones. And if you want catfish, if you want channel catfish in these lakes, around 30 to 50 catfish per acre, channel cats per acre. But make sure you take some of these out. Again, no crappie. Don't put gizzard shad in there. They'll ruin a bunch of stuff as well. The bigger lakes, they're great. 50 acres and down, crappie, Stuff like bullhead and Asian carp, don't put them in there. Just don't. Don't do it. Now comes the most difficult part for people when it comes to true pond management. Fish it right. You have to fish it right. And what does fish it right mean? It means you got to take fish out of it at certain times of the year and more than you'd probably think. So let's get into that. That's what I've reserved most of this video for, is the fish it right. The build it right and stock it right, you can find anywhere. You can look that up on Google. Google it. Tell you exactly how to do it in the area you are. But fishing it right is what people have the most problem with. And I'm going to tell you how to fish it right in order to grow trophy size bass. So, if your lake is fertilized, you want to take 15 to 20 pounds out of bass every year per acre. If it's non-fertilized, you want to take 10 to 15 pounds out per acre per year. And you want to do this in the summer and the fall. Don't do it in the spring. Don't do it pre-spawn. Take it out in the summer and the fall. The reason you don't want to take it out in pre-spawn, sorry, my fancy cape thing's choking me, guys. The reason you don't want to take them out in the early spring and stuff is because they're creating your next generation. They're spawning out. They're replacing themselves for the one you are going to take out. And actually putting more food in the ecosystem because bass will cannibalize each other. It's a thing. They're cannibals. I didn't design them that way, but that's just how they are. They're voracious. So, keep bass. Eat bass. They're fantastic. Make a blackened taco out of them. They're delicious. Take, my rule of thumb, anything under 14 inches. So if it's, 13 and a quarter and lower, take it out. Your ones bigger than that are going to be your spawners, especially, your 14 to 16 inch, and a lot of your fish over 20 inches is going to be your big females. 13 to 16 inch, or 14 to 16 inch, 14 to 17 inch, a lot of times are going to be your males. You need males for them to reproduce. The ones bigger than that, your big females, you definitely need those for reproduction. So if you're keeping these, let's just say 20 pounds of bass per acre. If you're keeping these out, 13 or anything under 14 inches, rule of thumb is 14, keep it. 13 and 3/4, take it out, and keep a log of how much you're taking out every time you do this. So if you've got a 10-acre lake, you want to take out around 200 pounds of bass per year. I know you're thinking, Thad, if I'm growing trophy bass, why am I eating my bass? Why am I getting rid of my bass? Well, it's called carrying capacity. Your lake can only produce so much food for these bass to eat. In Mississippi, on average, it takes 10 pounds of forage for that bass to grow 1 pound per pound of body weight. So if you have a 5-pound bass, you need in between 50 and 55 pounds of forage fish per year for that bass to eat to make it to 6 pounds. If you have an 8-pound bass, you need 85 pounds or so for it to reach the 9-pound. 2-pound bass, you need 20 to 25 pounds of forage fish for it to grow that 1 pound in a year. And bass can grow more than a pound. I've seen, a 3-year-old fish be 4 pounds. The aquatic biologist puts out fantastic, pond management. He's an expert when it comes to pond management. But you want to take out that 15 to 20 pounds of bass per year. You want to take them out in the summer and fall. You would like to remove them so they don't hit carrying capacity. But you also need to remove some brim too. Bluegill specifically can breed, 4 to 5 times a year the conditions are right. So you don't want to have an overpopulation of brim either, because brim will eat bass eggs. So you have to maintain a balance. If you take out, if you have a 10-acre lake and you take out 200 pounds of bass, you probably want to take out probably 300 to 400 pounds of the big brim every year too, because they'll eat fry as well. And all this is just maintaining a homeostasis of the pond or lake. Keep records of it. Remove those bass. If you don't, and you get overcrowded, you'll see a lot of stunted growth. You'll see, fish that are 3 and 4 years old that are only 1.5 pounds. You'll hear people say, a 7-pound mouth with a 4-pound body, or a 4-pound mouth and a 2-pound body. That's because it's stunted. There's not enough food to go around. Those fish are starving. So if you take out a bunch of the voracious smaller ones, it lets the medium and the bigger ones grow bigger and reproduce more easily. And you're never going to take out all the small bass. You're thinking, well, if I take out all the small bass and the big ones die off, there'll be none to grow bigger. You're never going to get all the small bass out of there. You're not. You want to take out those 14 inches and down when you catch them in the spring, or in the summer and the fall, not in the spring. And you want to do that to prevent overcrowding, starvation, food shortages, and keep that ecosystem in balance. Now, there are some caveats. If you're just starting out and this is a fresh stock, so you're stocking your pond for the first time, you want to stock your brim and grass carp, stuff like that, in the fall. Let them get someone established. You want to stock those bass in the spring. Now, vice versa, if it's brand new, you don't want to take any fish out for the first 3 years. So you want to give those fish 3 years to grow. That way, the ones with the better genetics will be a little bit bigger. The ones who are more fit, which means they can hunt better, they can reproduce better, will be a little bit bigger, passing on the better genes, and take the smaller stunted ones out in that situation. And that's why you want to wait 3 years to see kind of what you're working with there. Once you hit the 3-year mark, then you can start taking fish out. Now, people are going to say, well, if I need to take out 20 pounds per acre and I catch 3 8-pound bass, boom, that's my 20 pounds. Don't do that either. Those are your big, healthy, high fitness fish. That means they have the best genetics, they have the highest probability of spawning, reproducing, they are excellent hunters. They're going to pass on the good genes to the next generation. Don't take out the big girls. Take out the small stunted things. Take out the ones that are struggling, the thin ones, the sickly ones. Take those out. Fish it correctly. Okay? Now, I said we was going to touch on the red ear thing because I've had people ask, why not just stock it, with 500 bluegill per acre? There's a reason behind that. Well, if you've ever been fishing and eat bass like I do, a lot of times you'll see where they have these little worms and little parasites. You'll see them in the gills, you'll see them in the meat, you'll see them in the fins, and those are little parasitic worms. And they have a life cycle that goes snail, fish, bird poops back in the water, back into the snail. Where you break that cycle is the red ear. They're fun to catch. You can get like a 6-pound red ear. So they are fun to catch. So once you have those shell crackers established as red ear sunfish, they big snail predators, they can help break that cycle. They can greatly reduce the population of snails, therefore greatly reducing the risk and population of white grub. And if you have a bad white grub infestation, it's going to affect your fish overall. It can affect the way they eat. It can affect a whole lot of things on them because they're parasites, and we don't want that. So that can also be a beneficial part of your pond's ecosystem. I always suggest putting in between 50 to 150 red ear per acre, just to help prevent white grub and other parasites that can be transmitted through snails. It's a fantastic hack. It's a cheap hack in the long run, where you don't have to spend a lot of money to get rid of the problem or have to start all over because they help wipe out your bass population. So that kind of covers our build it right, stock it right, fish it right. That's the majority of it. But there's a few other things when it comes to good pond management. Sometimes you need to fertilize lakes to make sure you have good plankton and zooplankton and stuff like that. Because that's your basis of your food chain. It's what a lot of your fries eat. It's what a lot of stuff eats. So they're an important part of your ecosystem. Sometimes you have vegetation problems. You have to get rid of your vegetation, or you have too much algae or something like that. You have to be careful when you have too much aquatic vegetation in these ponds and lakes, because if you kill them all at once, you will have a fish kill, because what will happen is those plants will die, the cyanobacteria will break them down, and they will suck up all your oxygen. They will deplete your whole lake of oxygen. If you do a huge grass kill off, expect a huge fish kill off as well. If not, the entirety of your lake die. We don't want that. So I highly suggest doing your research, get with your local extension or hiring a professional if you have that kind of problem. They spend a lot of time learning how to do that. And these trophy bass lakes, too, you will see a lot of people who don't pull out fish. They'll say, well, I've got a bunch of brim. We catch brim all day long. So let's talk about the feeding habits of a bass. A 7-pound bass can eat a 9-10-inch gizzard shad. I've seen it. They're not eating a hand-sized bluegill. That's because bluegill have developed specialties defense against bass because they evolved alongside bass. They will spike them in their throat and they will kill the fish, so they eat the smaller ones. So if you're catching a ton of big brim and no small ones, there's a problem right there. If you're catching a ton of big bass and no longer catching little bass anymore, that can mean you have a brim crowded lake and you need to take a bunch of brim out because they're egg thieves and they're eating all the small bass fry and bass eggs. They're not making it to maturity at all. So you want to make sure you don't have a bass heavy lake or a brim heavy lake. You want them to be in balance. You want to be in homeostasis. And a lot of people don't get that when they're aiming for these big trophy lakes. They think, oh, I'm catching fish and throwing back, whether it be brim or bass, either one. If you have channel cats in there, definitely take some out because they will eat everything. But you have to take fish out. That's so hard to drive the point across to people, is you have to remove fish. Those ponds and lake only have X amount carrying capacity. And once that carrying capacity is hit, you're no longer going to have growth. You're going to have stunning. You're going to have sickly looking fish. You're going to have sad looking fish. And you're going to have a very poor fisheries. All right? Take fish out. Eat fish. If you don't eat fish, there are a lot of families out there who could use the meat. Take it to them. They will happily eat it. I follow the creel limit on most lakes I'm fishing at, especially for bass, if I'm not in a tournament. If I'm in a tournament, I can't keep them. And then kayak tournaments. But if I'm just out there fun fishing or something like that, I'll throw some bass on a stringer and give it to someone on the bank who's fishing for food in a heartbeat if I don't take them home myself. Creel limits are not there to keep people from, don't catch this many. Don't catch. We don't need to be keeping them. Creel limits are there for us to hit. If there's a creel limit of 10, like in Mississippi, it means keep 10 bass. That will keep your lake in better balance. You take some of these giant lakes like Lake Fork or something, you could probably take out 30 or 40 pounds of bass per acre, and it wouldn't really hurt those lakes. But if you don't take any bass out, that's going to do substantial damage to them. Mississippi, there's not a lot of stuff that eats bass other than the raccoons, bears, and gators, turtles, and rednecks. That's it. So if we don't take them out, they're just going to overpopulate. And your farm ponds, if you don't take them out, they're going to overpopulate. It's going to be a poor fishery, and you're going to get mad. If you're going to spend all this money building these lakes and these ponds to grow big bass in, to grow these trophy bass in, you've got to fish it right. You got to build it right, stock it right, and fish it right. And I dare say fish it right is the most important part, hands down. Take your bass out. Take brim out when need be. Make sure there's plenty of cover for the fries to reach maturity. And for goodness sake, don't put crappie in a pond or lake that's less than 50 acres. You will just ruin it and you'll have wasted all of your money. My final note is this, because I've seen this happen. Do not, and I cannot emphasize this enough, bring fish from a different body of water into your pond. I wish I would have mentioned this earlier, but for goodness sake, do not, if you catch an 8-pound bass, do not bring it to your lake and put it in it. That fish got big because it became specializing hunting in that lake. It may be a shad specialist hunting, and you only have brim in there, and it's going to get sick, it's going to die, or it's going to about starve to death because it's not brim specialized hunting. It didn't get big hunting brim in that ecosystem. But more importantly, it could bring all kinds of diseases and parasites that your bass have never been exposed to, your brim have never been exposed to, and it could wipe out your entire school. It could devastate a lake. It could bring parasites, disease, all kind of stuff into that particular body of water. And it could completely devastate it. And you spend all that money for nothing just because you want to bring, one big bass and stick it in there that you may or may not ever catch again. Or bring a bunch of brim in there and stick in there because you don't want to spend the money to stock it. And I get it. Stocking's expensive if you do it right. But don't bring foreign bodies in because there's no telling what diseases or parasites or foreign bodies are they're bringing in with them. You could run into all kind of problems doing that. So it's better off to not. Build it right. Stock it right. Fish it right. Don't bring stuff in from other bodies of water, and no crappie. That's my final thought, guys and gals. I hope this has been informative. If y'all would like me to go in deeper on a lot of this stuff, please let me know. I will happily do it, and I'll bring it up into a multi-episode thing. Tight lines, take a kid fishing, be good stewards of our land. For goodness sake, don't put crappie in a small lake. See y'all later. And once they're in the snail, hold on one second, guys.
Daddy?
Yes, buddy?
Say good night.
Good night, buddy. I love you.
I want the hug.
You want a hug? Okay. We don't have to leave that in. Oh, no.
You okay? Oh, okay.
We may have to do some trimming on this.